The biggest story of the GAA winter, though, is off the ball team of the decade. Anthony Moyles has been picking his team. I've been picking my team. Tommy Rooney joins us in studio as a neutral observer. How are you, Tommy?
Well, lads.
You excited?
I'm going to be the referee here. Am I excited? I got your texts early this morning and late last night, and there's a couple of points of disagreement.
Oh, let's get straight into it.
Can you handle the pressure, Tommy, of this?
I can handle the pressure.
This is a big event.
I feel like Buddy E felt the pressure last night.
Well, you know, those 3 minutes, I was sweating it.
See, he says 3 minutes. And then he's like, oh, and then I Googled this, and then I was on this, and then I was like checking this, and then Colin Keys was like this. I'd say he was...
Owen was texting me in Japan. He was like, let's get Moyles in at the start of November and we'll do the team of the decade.
Yeah. Sitting there, I've been just mulling this over the last 6 weeks.
For 9 years.
You both have a couple of odd selections. I'll tell you that much before you get into them.
Well, do you want to list off your team from goalkeeper to corner forward?
No. I think you go. Are you going first?
Okay, I can go first if you want.
Yeah, you go first.
It's your
slot.
I've got nothing to hide here.
So.
Big shock in goal as I go for Stephen Cluxton. Full back line of Philly McMahon, Johnny Cooper and Keith Higgins. Half back line of Lee Keegan, James McCarthy and Jack McCaffrey. Brian Fenton and Michael Murphy, a bit of a talking point there perhaps in midfield, kind of shoehorning him in there to be quite honest with you. Diarmuid Connolly, Kieran Kilkenny and Paul Flynn in the half forward line. Con O'Callaghan, Bernard Brogan and the Gooch is my full forward line.
Oh!
A couple of very interesting developments. I think now, so we can get into a proper discussion, does Anthony reveal his team now as well?
Yeah, let's go for it. Go for it, Anthony. Let's just, in case some of the things I think are controversial.
I'm going to change my team. Okay, so I went with Cluxton as well. Mark O'Shea, McCarthy, Keith Higgins, Keegan, O'Sullivan, Jack McCaffrey, Fenton, Murphy, same midfield partnership.
Okay.
Ryan McHugh, Aidan O'Shea, Kilkenny, the Gooch, Bernard Brogan and...
Manzi.
They're very different teams. I thought that Michael Murphy and Gooch would be the two that you would most heavily disagree with, but lo and behold, you've gone for them in the exact same positions. Let's start with full back line. You've gone for James McCarthy as your full back. Is that a shoehorning in, or
it's a little bit of that?
Okay.
Yeah, it's a little bit of that because I suppose we discussed this earlier on. Full back was a tricky position actually. Okay, Cooper. Yeah, there was Cooper or Philly, and I was bordering on Cooper, and then I looked at Graham Canty at the start of the decade. Very, very strong player, was your archetypal kind of full back. McGee needs to probably be in the question.
He's in the mix, isn't he, Neil?
3 All-Stars for, full back, so if you want to say, but the way I looked at that was, and I think probably people at the time that was a defensive system, more so than he was a stereotypical full back, if you know what I mean. So there was the defensive system that obviously Jim McGuinness brought in. So so McCarthy was. I think Mark O'Shea has to be in there.
Just for pure aesthetics, why wouldn't you put Cian O'Sullivan at 3 and McCarthy at 6?
I was thinking that, yeah.
Like this is actually really grinding my gears right now.
Because I think O'Sullivan completely altered the 6th position for Dublin. And I think for a long number of years, well, not for a long number of years, but when he was missing with hamstrings and when he went off a bit of the boil a bit, I think they struggled to fill that gap for them. And they actually had to change the way they played to actually say, well, he actually perfectly suited what we needed to do here. Because he did change. He was a pivotal player for them.
He was essential.
15, 16, 17.
3 in a row at the start.
I think he was essential. And I think what he did was he changed the position of 6 because 6 was very much the type of thing where you either went with the 11 or you sat back in front. And essentially he was a sweeper within the 6 role. He was a sweeper within that setup and he could cover off players. He was one of the types of guys who decided the tempo of the game. Like more often than not, he would decide whether they were going to go hard at a team or hold on to the ball. A lot of calls went through him, and I think he was a guy that I think when he was missing, I think it was a big loss for them.
He also started the 2011 final as well at cornerback. How on earth is he not in your team?
He's been there a long time now.
I wasn't going to have him in the full back line. Simple as that. Like I think that if you have the reason why it kind of grinds my gears a little bit is because James McCarthy is full-back, and I think if the lesser of 2 evils is having James McCarthy at 6 and Cian O'Sullivan at full-back, but if you're picking a full-back, is Cian O'Sullivan one of the best full-backs of the decade?
Cian O'Sullivan?
Yeah.
No.
No, exactly. So that's why I didn't pick him at full-back. It's as simple as that.
I didn't ask you about full-back. I asked you about the defence as a whole.
Okay, so then you
could have put James McCarthy in the midfield.
So then you get into... Sorry, I forgot that you picked him in the half-backs. So then you get into my half-backs, which are Jack McCaffrey, James McCarthy or Lee Keegan. I just think it's... And then you were trying to say, how do I get James McCarthy into the team? Do I put him into midfield? And then you look at that forward line, and there's no way I'm getting Michael Murphy into that forward line. So it comes back to the fact that Cian O'Sullivan is the one who drops out of that, say, that 11, that kind of further, frontmost 11. I just couldn't find any room for Cian O'Sullivan there. Is he next man in? Potentially. Or is Carl Lacey next man in that half-back line?
Yeah.
Potentially. That's the question that I had. But I just had James McCarthy, for me, as a better complete footballer at number 6. If James McCarthy was asked to do a sweeping role, he wouldn't have been as good as Cian O'Sullivan, but he wasn't. Instead, he proved himself to be one of the best half-backs come midfielders that we've seen in the last couple of decades.
Again, I kind of went on, I was saying earlier on, the iconic type thing. So a guy who's kind of changed the position and who has always been either a threat at the position or a real mainstay, and I think O'Sullivan fits that role. Okay, like Colm Boyle is
very close.
He's very, very close. Himself and Lacey were so close. Like, and Boyle is very, very hard done by, and it's literally a situation of, if you were, would you put him in corner back?
Colin Boyle was in your team at 7:29 a.m. this morning.
Was he?
He was, yeah. But then he was, because, you know, and that's the thing. Certain teams had much stronger defenders. And then certain teams obviously had much more prowess in the forward line. And Mayo, even though they had Cillian O'Connor and these guys, you would probably say that their three stalwarts over the last 10 years was Higgins, Boyle and Keegan. You know, from what they did as well.
Yeah.
Like, you talk about attacking half-backs. And Durkin is kind of getting there, you know, and guys who would always put you on the back foot.
Man markers too, on the other end as well.
Exactly, absolutely. And Higgins could go anywhere. You know, and I think the modern game with the defenders, I think it is a bit of fluidity in there, you know. Like Mark O'Shea is probably, but, you know, you tip that, like Mark O'Shea.
In terms of what he's done this decade, like I was very heavily considering Mark O'Shea as well. Like, if I was picking up my heart, of course, he'd be in there. But like, in terms of what he's done this decade, in terms of the peaks he's reached this decade, has he had as many good moments as Philly McMahon and Johnny Cooper?
Well, I think, again, if we were picking it in 15, you'd say absolutely he's in. You know, he had an All-Star. I think he had five All-Irelands, 3 All-Stars. 2016 he retired. 2014 he got his All-Ireland.
Footballer of the year in 07?
Yeah, footballer of the year.
Like
no,
that's what I mean. The peak is in a different decade.
But I still think that he was a go-to guy for Kerry in those 5 or 6 years from 2000 to 2015.
Yeah,
he was, and he was a guy who was man-marked on the best forward of the opposition team.
Always, yeah.
Always. You know, he marked Bernard Brogan at his pomp, you know, and did well against those kind of fellas. He would have marked McManus. He would have been put on all of the opposition danger men. Now, that's not to say that Higgins was either. And Cooper, I think it was very, very close. Like, I've 7 Dublin players in my team, so I was going to say, put Cooper in, that's 8. And you probably could have had another forward in there.
Owen has 11.
Do I have 11?
Owen has 11 dubs.
Yes.
But lads, we're talking 7 All-Ireland.
You are.
You've only given them a player for each All-Ireland.
Well, what I'm trying to do is,
too many.
but I am trying to say, though, like, so if you went into the transfer market, right, you know, so
yeah, it's true. You pick Mark O'Shea over the two boys. If you're sitting in the year 2015 and you've got a transfer, okay, maybe not. It's 2013 to 14, and you've got a transfer market between O'Shea, Cooper, and Philly McMahon. You're picking Mark O'Shea, and maybe that's where I did go wrong a little bit. I got kind of carried away by the blue wave here a little bit. The success of Philly and Johnny Cooper actually blinded me more than their qualities over Mark O'Shea.
I think Cooper's very, very, Cooper is but so close.
I will say, just for clarity, I'm not here for 1 second saying that Johnny Cooper and Philly McMahon are at their peak better footballers than Mark O'Shea was at his peak. I'm just saying that Mark O'Shea's peak came in a different decade to what we're talking about.
Mark O'Shea's peak crossed the decade. It was 05 to 15 probably.
Exactly. And I think, it was probably even later. It was probably like 07, 08 into its kind of 11, 12. Lacey's very unfortunate. Like, Lacey was, he was another one of these guys.
He was essential to McGuinness.
Absolutely. Because he was one of the, I think even prior to Keegan, to a certain degree, and Boyle, he was one of these half-backs that just went. You know, like, I mean, you look back, you think of those, you just see him raiding up and down the pitch, you know, with abandon just gone, you know, setting up things, getting involved, and really breaking that mould of that, you know, counter-attack kind of style that McGuinness had. He was phenomenal.
What's your take on Michael Murphy in midfield, Tommy? We've both gone from.
I'm splitting it, to be honest with you. And for me, I nearly would have put James McCarthy into your midfield and put Cian O'Sullivan in there. And like, it was close. And Murphy is a full forward. I've always lamented the fact that Murphy didn't get enough game time at full forward. And I really do think that he could be put into either of your full forward lines.
I agree.
I really do think he could. I think he's
who
the
drops
perfect
out
14.
in your view?
Con has loads of time left in his career, in my opinion.
But the heights he's already reached have been
And when we're talking teams of the
extraordinary.
decade, like Conor McManus is one of the most skillful footballers that we've come across in the last decade.
Yeah.
But he hasn't won the All-Ireland that Michael Murphy has. So, like, for me, if I was to make that argument, I would potentially, if I had another midfielder, potentially slip Murphy into 14. But then again, who are you putting in there? Is it David Moran? Is it Colin Kavanagh?
Aidan O'Shea.
Is it Aidan O'Shea, the 2013 Footballer of the Year, Michael Darren McCauley? Did he do enough across the decade?
For me, there's a big drop-off after a couple of those. That maybe it's just by dint of the fact that it's midfield. There's actually people who played midfield in other positions. But it seemed to me that if you lose Michael Murphy from your team, in terms of
He has to be in the team. Murphy's in the team.
I think I was going to put McCarthy in midfield, and the thing about Murphy is I think he has to go in. And I was between O'Shea, but O'Shea had 3 All-Stars between 2010 and 2019. You know, and again, O'Shea gets an awful lot of flack because of Mayo's failings. And yes, he probably he didn't have his best days, but he was a serious player for them. You know, and he dragged them through a lot of games, and he was the heartbeat for them, and he was a bit of a lightning rod for them, really, and he was a lightning rod for criticism that came his way. But I don't think he really, for me, I don't think he shirked his responsibility. I think of some other guys who maybe aren't in our lineups here let them down at certain times, but I think he has to go in. Murphy has to go in. I agree somewhere. Whether it's McCarthy, because I just think even this year he's an absolute colossus.
Quick word on the forwards. If I had to pick. So say if Michael Murphy gets run into my full forward line, if I had to pick Bernard Brogan, Conor Callaghan or Colm Cooper, I'd go for Colin Gooch.
Would you?
We could Gooch.
No, I would cut Brogan. If I had to be limited to that full forward line. But what I would have done probably is move Con out to the half forward line and then drop Paul Flynn or something like that.
Let's talk Conor Callaghan here. We're talking a decade.
Yes.
Conor Callaghan has played 3 years in this decade.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think
that is how good he has been. Like one of the most dangerous inside forwards.
I kind of had a rule: you had to have a lot of hair in your face. And he's just too young for me, you know. So like
for me as well.
I think he's a bit too young.
Listen, if you can include Gooch in your decade, you can include Con in your decade.
But Gooch,
like Gooch is 10, 11, 12. 13,
14,
14 he's injured when they win the All-Ireland. Remember, he's gone for the whole year.
Sorry, yeah.
So Con, you're talking, 17, 18, 19. Granted, it's only 3 years, but it's still it's a stunning 3 years.
Yeah. First year wasn't that...
17 and 19.
Is it a stunning 3 years?
The middle year wasn't great. 18 wasn't fantastic.
It wasn't fantastic.
The goal against Tyrone, that's when everyone was like, all right, this guy can do this.
Yeah, I know.
The Leinster Championship, he wins man of the match in the Leinster final that year. You know, the Leinster Championship is the biggest.
Jesus Christ, you know, you'd win the...
We're talking team in a decade here. Like, provincials don't come
No, you have to be... Like, McManus for me, again, you line up cornerback, you're saying to you, we're playing Monaghan, we're playing McManus. Like, I mean, even see what he did at the weekend.
Yeah.
Like, the guy is an absolute... He literally has carried that team and gone, listen, give me the ball, I will do this. Like, and I know O'Callaghan, absolutely. Kilkenny was a strange one for me, because some people either love him or you kind of go, ooh, is he really that? But again, he's a guy that has defined that forward line for Dublin.
That's it, yeah.
I'll be honest. There's no argument about Kieran Kilkenny in a team of the decade. But there's a serious question to be asked about Anthony Moyles, about not having Paul Flynn in his team.
And Diarmuid Connolly.
And we don't even have to get into Diarmuid. That's an obvious one. But like, Paul Flynn and Diarmuid Connolly.
Okay, I'll say...
That is the quintessential half-forward line.
Okay, I'll say about Connolly, right, that we just haven't seen him enough.
Oh, what are you talking about?
No, but
what are you talking about?
He's gone off the ball. He's been away. He's still, like, I mean, look, honourable mentions. I have in here honourable mentions, and he's in there.
That's all he wants, really.
Is Kieran McDonald in the last decade? He has to be in your team of the decade.
Okay, so
delivered as well, more than McDonald.
Yeah, he has delivered. Like, I mean, he's up there. I still don't think,
up there.
as players go, right. So I have Ryan McHugh in there. Right, so people say, oh, Jesus, why Ryan?
There's no hair in Ryan McHugh's face.
There's a bit. There's a bit more than Con. I think McHugh is as important to Donegal as Murphy is.
Sure, but what have Donegal done in the Ryan McHugh era?
But like, you're making that same point now, and you made a point about Conor McManus.
See, he's flipping his arguments.
But
they beat Dublin. They're the only team to beat Dublin in the Ryan McHugh era. He won that game for Donegal.
Okay, I suppose he is, as you said back in the day, he's the Seamus Darby of this decade of the 5 in a row.
He was.
Seamus Darby would
Murphy on himself. The kick out. He
McHugh's been a superstar.
Yeah.
But how is Diarmuid Connolly not in there?
I just think that Connolly, if Connolly, like, so this year, like, did Connolly do anything this year?
He played that unbelievable pass and
Come on.
He meant that. He meant that.
Did he do anything this year?
But the visa, yeah.
No. Did he do anything last year?
No. But did Ryan McHugh do anything from 2010 to 2014?
Yeah, but okay, so 2010, did Dermot do anything in 2010?
Jim McConnell had a massive year 2011.
2010 to 2014 is unfair to judge against Ryan McHugh.
I know.
Like, you can only judge what the players have been there for.
You know, he's absolutely right up there. I think, and Paul Flynn is another guy who was a backbone of the Dublin team. And I think between himself and Kilkenny, I think this is quite similar, right? I think O'Shea has to go in there because of what he does. Bernard Brogan is a guy who obviously carried that forward line for many a year, right? And the Gooch has to go in there for what he's done. And probably the Gooch, like O'Shea, he's kind of a little bit...
Well, Gooch would have been Footballer of the Year in 2011 had Kevin McManaman not scored that goal. I'm convinced of that. And then his evolution in 2013.
Correct.
And that's the reason why he's in there. He's been absolutely top class in two different positions after his peak. Well, I would say 11 is still very, very close to his peak, and I think that just is true greatness.
What about Mick Fitzsimons for Dublin, defender?
Huge,
like a
huge
guy
shout.
who's been there from
Huge
10.
shout.
He's been all the way through the decade.
Killian O'Connor.
Killian O'Connor I had in there as an
decade,
honourable
He's the most
mention.
competitive. He's up against all-time greats in that position, and granted, he's the top scorer of all time in the Gaelic Football
But I
Championship.
still think when it came to the real crunch,
I still, when it comes to the crunch, who's right now, if you could pick any forwards in the country, it's Conor O'Callaghan, and that is why I picked him. If you go back 2 years ago, who's the forward that you'd pick, an inside forward that would get you a goal, that would be the number one pick in a draft, or there was a GAA draft, Conor O'Callaghan. That's unbelievable
2 years ago.
I'm saying that at the end of 2017, you would pick him, and that is why he's in there. Sorry to bring it back to Conor O'Callaghan. We are out of time. Who's got what is the team of the decade? Tommy?
I had the easy. I just had to sit in the fence here and kind of.
this is not an easy process.
You only have 5 footballers. You've only got 5 footballers of the year over those 10 years. There's no footballers of the year from 2011 to 2014 that's been chosen in either of your teams.
Tommy, you're getting very technical now.
I think essentially we can settle on the goalkeeper.
Yeah.
We can agree on the half-back line to an extent.
Which of the 15s is better? That's what we want to know. We just want to pick a winner here.
Which of the 15s is better? Like, Moyes is a great shot with Conor McManus and Cian O'Sullivan. Owen, you're right with
Owen's just gone for the Dublin team.
with Jim McConnell and Paul Flynn.
How many medals do they have?
It's not all about the medals, Owen.
Right. The jury is still out, to be quite honest with you. Myself and Anthony tried to come up with the ultimate team of the decade, combining my team with his team. And here's what we've got. This is a working kind of team. That is not the team. There has been a change to that that's just come up. Stephen Cluxton, Mark O'Shea, Cian O'Sullivan, Keith Higgins, Jack McCaffrey, James McCarthy, Lee Keegan, Brian Fenton, Michael Murphy. And the forwards, Diarmuid Connolly, which is the last minute changes you can see from that graphic, Kieran Kilkenny, Paul Flynn, Colin Cooper, Bernard Brogan, and Conor McManus. So I've made a lot of, I've allowed you to have a few things here. I've allowed you to have Mark O'Shea. I've allowed you to have Cian O'Sullivan.
Allowed me to have Mark O'Shea. Of all the people you went, I'll give you Mark O'Shea. And I wonder why.
Conor McManus. I've given up.
If I said Paul Gainey, you would have allowed me to have him too, probably.
For sure.
And David Moore.
If you picked me to be in the team, any Kerry man, just put them in there.
I think there's been a bit of wiggle room, and there's been more wiggle room. My whole, Cian O'Sullivan, the number 6 pivotal role, he's now shooting at full back. So, I don't know. I'll give you Cooper. That means O'Shea has to come out. But that means I have to put someone in the forward line. Aidan O'Shea is probably unlucky.
So who are you putting into the forward line then, or like who are into the forward line?
I think your half forward line.
So you would be picking Aidan O'Shea over Diarmuid Connolly.
Yes.
As a half forward.
Centre half
the
forward.
Decade of 2000 to 2019.
He's 3 All-Stars. Connolly is 2.
Who's the better player? Who has been the better player? Aidan O'Shea, phenomenal player. I think he was excellent at midfield this year.
Who's been the most important? Who has been the more important player to his team?
But you see, then Conor McManus would be a shoe-in, and I wouldn't have even considered not putting him into my team.
Well, if I was picking a 15 tomorrow, I'd kind of go, okay, so Connolly, yes, he has a lot of attributes, but I'm saying, is he a starting man on my starting 15 tomorrow? with everything, all the different stuff brought in, or do I want to go with, say, a Flynn or a Kilkenny or a Con O'Callaghan? I think there's just guys ahead of him.
Well, if you're bringing in all the different...
Ryan McHugh.
If you're bringing in all the different stuff that comes in, Anthony, then you're saying, Cooper, get out of the team, you're almost 40. Like, you can't be judging things on where things are. Like that's not how it works. You're picking things based on the greatness of the player and the brilliance that they've shown throughout the decade.
I think O'Shea has been an ever-presence in the Mayo, and has been a guy who's been at the forefront of Gaelic football for the last 10 years. So we are trying to do a decade here.
Have him. So who are you getting rid of, Connolly or Flynn?
I'll give you Cooper.
Okay, Johnny Cooper in, Mark O'Shea, you're out.
O'Shea, you're getting rid of Mark O'Shea.
You know what?
For all the things he's done for Kerry.
I'm an unbiased journalist.
Oh my
Anthony.
God, that's shocking.
And then, are you getting rid of Connolly or Flynn?
The O'Shea, the dynasty, they'll be after you. You do know that.
They will. They certainly will. But at least he's in there. He was in there.
I'd like to keep Mark.
So you want to keep... Okay, Grant, I'll give you Mark over.
I like that. Okay, we'll go with that.
We'll go with that. So Aidan O'Shea doesn't make it. Very close on the bench. Player of the decade.
A lot of honourable mentions. Tyrone haven't been mentioned.
No Tyrone.
Like, Petey Hart.
It's tough to make any case for Peter Hart over that half-back line.
I'd give Colin Kavanagh an honourable mention. I think Kavanagh, again, for the style of play, what he did, and when he is missing from that kind of sweeper role in behind the six, they're exposed. Even more so than Sean.
Right.
I think Sean gave them something specific,
yeah.
But I think Colin Kavanagh was pivotal. If I'm trying to think of, if you're a manager, you're sitting there on whatever night it is with your selectors, who were one of the first guys you put down in the team sheet? Kavanagh was one.
Because of the role he fulfilled, and he was absolutely exceptional at it. And he still is exceptional at it, let's not forget.
Yeah.
I'll give you player of the decade. We are a team working on this, so I'll give you that.
Yeah. Again, I think player of the decade has to be someone who has pretty much nearly spanned the decade. But
that's very tough. Like, some players' career span from an 05 to a 17 or...
But I'm saying the majority, okay? So you can't give it to O'Callaghan, for example.
Well, Brian Fenton only came midway through the decade, and he will be my banker for
Fenton was 15. I'd give it to Cluxton.
Stephen Cluxton, of course. I kind of... Stephen Cluxton.
Right in the mix. I was going to say McCarthy or McCaffrey. Right. But I think McCarthy's up there. Like, McCaffrey was...
Sorry, what am I talking about? Jack McCaffrey is player of the decade. I would give it to Jack McCaffrey.
No, Cluxton.
Jack McCaffrey has been the best footballer we've seen this decade and one of the best of all time.
Cluxton. And do you know the amazing thing is Cluxton only actually won. Like, I was going through, there's some really funky goalkeepers who've been in since 2010. Like, Cluxton actually didn't win a whole pile. He won very few All-Stars.
He had a long old gap before this year, before winning Footballer of the Year.
Yeah, so I think as again a guy who changed the game, he's in there for me.
Our final team, the off-the-ball football team of the decade, is as follows. Stephen Cluxton, also footballer of the decade. Mark O'Shea, Cian O'Sullivan, Keith Higgins is your full back line. The half-backs are Jack McCaffrey, James McCarthy and Lee Keegan. Brian Fenton and Michael Murphy make up your midfields. A half-forward line, an awesome half-forward line if I say so myself. Diarmuid Connolly, Kieran Kilkenny and Paul Flynn. And then inside, three of the best sharpshooters perhaps we've ever seen. Colm Cooper, Bernard Brogan and Cormac Manus. That is a wrap, ladies and gentlemen. That is a fantastic team. And congratulations, Anthony, on taking part in all of that. Thanks for joining us this morning. We'll chat to you soon.